First of all, welcome everyone to join our booth speaker series. Due to the COVID situation, we have adopted Zoom as a way to keep all alumni in China and also around the world engaged, which turns out is becoming a phenomenon. So we have more events coming up very soon. Today, we have 121 registration for today's events, with over 95% of booth alumni and current students. So welcome, and hope you are safe no matter where you are. Today we're gonna, we have the pleasure of having Jax Li and Zhou Darcy to share with us their insights into the gaming and the esports industry. So both of them have been very, they have prepared a great presentation. They will both review with us. So if you have questions, please leave your question. I think last time we had a Q&A chat room. So this time looks like we only have the chat room. So you can leave your questions in the chat room. And then after their presentation, we will unmute you, go through your questions and give everybody a few minutes to grade each other. So, I think we'll just get started. I'll give a quick introduction of both of the speakers. So the first speaker we have today is Jax Li. Jax is actually a current student with an executive program in Hong Kong. Jax has been working in Tencent for 8 years, since pretty much he graduated. He's now leading the overseas development, especially emerging markets, on behalf of Tencent Games, including market entry strategy, business development, and investment. Today, his topic is about gaming market landscape and trend in the current world. Particularly, he's gonna share some views of the opportunities for investment layout. So if you have any questions, ready to ask Jax later. Our second speaker will be Darcy Zhou. Darcy graduated from full-time booth program in 2014. He was the CEO assistant at VIP.com, Chinese name Wei Pinghui, for 4 years. And then in 2018, he joined the TJ Sports. Darcy is a hardcore gamer since high school. I was gonna ask him, how did he manage to turn this into a profession rather than addict, right? So when he found out the opportunity to work in esports, he left e-commerce without any hesitation. The most remarkable moment, according to Darcy, he ever experienced is when he led the Chinese national team, won the global medal of LOL Esports in 2018 Asian Games. So, both of them have prepared a great presentation. So we're gonna first, I guess, let both of you to, say hello to everyone, and then we start the presentation.
Hi, everyone. This is Jax.
Hi, this is Darcy.
Great. Well, thank you. And I guess we'll just, go with Jax first. Jax, you want to share your presentation? Thank you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, I would thank to Cindy and all the organizers here about organizing such a fantastic event, like on every weekend. And also thanks for every participant to taking a couple of hours to spend with us, to trying to, experience the boring, like the evening of the weekend, all right? So now I'm gonna get a start. So for the sharing this time, I'm gonna do is basically like 2 sections. the first one is going to be focused on the gaming industry landscape. Basically, it's going to be including some basic market overview, as well as the current market strategy, as well as what the market looks like in the current world. And the second section is going to be sharing some trend and outlook in the new normal of the world, especially in the post-COVID-19 world, right? They're going to get a start. So first of all, I just want to give you a very basic picture of the whole global market, global gaming market, how it looks like. So we basically divided the whole gaming market into 3 sections by its different platform. One is mobile, and then is PC and console. So obviously, you will see in the most recent 4 years, the biggest gainer is the console and mobile games. So it's very easy to understand why the mobile gained so much market share, because of the increasing of the penetration of the smartphones worldwide. But why the console games has growing so fast? Basically, the console games is heavily relying on the sales of the hardware device, like the PS4, the Xbox, and the Switch. And in 2018, the 3 devices just released in the same time, so it just helped boost the market pretty much in the following several years. And then if you look at the right-hand side, obviously you will find the biggest contributor is Asia Pacific, and especially the China, Korean, and Japan. They contributed collectively for nearly half of the global market. And also the North American just contribute a quarter of it, and then the Europe and the Middle East and Africa contribute nearly a quarter of it, and then the rest of the pie has been taken by Latin America. To just to give you, a more straightforward concept, in this year we forecast that the total revenue of the global will be reaching like $165 billion in total. So which is almost like 4 times of the box office revenue, which is the cinema tickets revenue in total. The 院线收入, as well as the 3 times almost like the music industry revenue in total. So I also want to share with you some basic information of the China market. So in the most recent 10 years, it is like fastest growing period in China of gaming industry. And in the first 5 years of the most recent 10 years, like the China market just gained like over 30% on CAGR each of the year in terms of the growing rate. But in the recent 5 years, it just been slowed down to 10%. So what makes it, and what is the reason? Basically, the middle picture will explain it, the underlying reason. So in the first 5 years, the penetration of the smartphone, as well as the like incrementally growing rate of the Chinese gamers, basically it's helped push up the growing rate of the China gaming market pretty much as like 41%. But in the most recent 5 years, the China gamers growing rate just has been slowed down to 5%. So which means the demographic dividend has already been exhausted, and the users is getting more and more saturated. So what's the next strategy for most of the game makers? So actually, even though like the Chinese users has reached the bottom leg, that the revenue of the game market has still growing in the double digits. So basically, the biggest contributor is from the increasing of the game ARPU. Well, the full name is the average revenue from the per users, right? So obviously, you will say for each of the user contribution from the 2014 to 2018, it just climbed from 10 to 30, almost like 3 times than before. Also, to describe the whole market's value chain, I just wanted to give you some example to try to make you better understand how the game value chain works in the whole industry. So, for example, you know, the core part of the whole industry is like the central 3 part of it. So one is the game developer, and then is the game publisher and distributors. So for a typical game, basically, you know, it will be integrated with some famous IPs. So the IP holders is even in the upper stream of the whole value chain. For example, you know, there's different type of the IP holders. The one is the animation, which is, for example, like Disney. They have like lots of famous IPs like Marvel, like Disney families. Second category is the movie and the TV series, such as like the Game of Thrones, right? And also there is some novels has been remade as games. For example, like the Three Bodies written by Liu Cixin, or even like the Harry Potter's in UK. But you know, I would say the border of each of the category are getting more and more unclear and ambiguous. So, which means like in the future, the IP holders are also getting more and more convenient. So, as a typical game, we basically will be developed by game developers. So you will say like Tencent Games or NetEase or some other companies are both playing the game developer roles and game publisher roles, right? So after a game being developed, they will usually the developer will find a game developer to help publish the game, and then the game will come to a game store. So typically, the game store has like two types. One is from iOS, so the only store is like the App Store from Apple. And in Android, this is a little bit different between China and the overseas market, because basically, you know, in global markets, the Google Play is very dominant in the market. But in China, because it has been banned, so this kind of market is very fragmented. For example, like Tencent's 应用宝 or My English My Apps is one of the major players in it, and also some third-party providers like 360, Sanlilin, also like some phone makers or OEMs like Huawei, Oppo, Samsung. They all have their own independent like app stores. So I would say like by doing this, you know, like different app stores will help push up the Android gaming market to be more and more booming. But also the negative impact is it makes this market is more fragmented. For example, like in the past, when the user download a game from the My Apps or from Huawei store, like usually it's not be able to connect it with the user who downloaded the games from 360 or from Oppo store, right? So that makes the users gaming experience very bad, because you know they want to play with their friends. They want to play with different type of the users. So in the recent couple of years, like we're saying, a lot of the Android app store holders just consolidate as you know, some alliance to try to allow the users to play with each other, even though downloading the games from different channels. So that is way better than before. And once the game get distributed in the App Store, it will go through like 2 channels to finally approach the end users. So it's heavily depending on the type of the game. So, you know, for the first type of game is most typical and classic games, which basically allows the users to purchase the in-game, you know, items from the game itself. And this is the most typical monetization approach of the game. But there is another type of game, which is you probably have played some type of game which doesn't have any in-game purchase items, but there is a lot of like pop-ups or banners showing up in like some random place in the game, right? And sometimes, even though like you don't want to click any ads, but it will induce you to click those kind of ads, and it will lead you to some other places to download another app, or even like lead you to some e-commerce website as well. So by doing that, those games can also get some revenue share from those like ads providers like ByteDance, Toutiao, or Guanglintong provided by Tencent, or some production provided by Baidu. And finally, it approaches the end users. So beside of the core business value chain, there is also some peripheral players, like the streaming, like Douyu and Huya, who are doing the online streaming, led by the hosts, the streamers. And also there is some like unique gold farming studios, which is kind of like help some people who have pretty much money, but who don't have much time to spend on the game, but want to be very strong. So, those people are being allowed to purchase the virtual currency with the real money from those kind of studios. And also some kind of like advertisement optimization, or some like, data analytic firms, which will help optimize the monetization, like efficiency of the games. So I also want to, bring everyone a little bit deeper inside of the gaming industry by illustrating the different genres of the different revenue scale. So for the biggest game genre, which is called like MOBA games, well, basically the masterpiece is like 王者荣耀. In English, is like King's Glory, right? This is a very crazy game, just pushed up the whole game category to almost like 30 billion, like in terms of the annual gross revenue. And then it's followed by the traditional MMORPG, which is dominated by NetEase, also the biggest rival of Tencent in China. And followed by that, it's the various of different type of games, such as like strategy games, or some card-based MMORPG games, also some shooter games, which is led by PUBG. I believe like some of you have already played that game, and this is also a very worldwide popular game in the global. I'm gonna spend some pages to describe that game later. So for this sharing, personally, I don't want to spend too much content on describe like Tencent's achievement or Tencent's performance in the global gaming market. But I would say, to describe the whole gaming market in both China and global, Tencent is typically an unavoidable topic to illustrate everything. So I would say, like, since 5 years ago, Tencent has already became the first place in the whole gaming category in terms of the revenue, right? Followed by Sony and Microsoft. They basically are the console game makers as well as the game developers. They have their own studios, and they've also acquired pretty aggressively in the global for those kind of AAA developers. And then it's followed by Apple, which is famous with its notorious like Apple tax, right? You probably heard of this word. So basically, for every game which published in Apple devices, Apple is gonna charge 30% as Apple tax for every single game. So by doing that, Apple just being the fourth players in the global market in terms of the game revenue. And then it's followed by Activision Blizzard, which is the most typical and traditional game developers in the world. I'm pretty sure like most of the males in our audience have played at least one game from Activision Blizzard, right? For example, they have like StarCraft, they have like World of Warcraft, they also have like Call of Duty Online. And then it's followed by Google, which has a similar business model as Apple. The only difference is they're not be able to make money in China. And then is NetEase, who is the biggest rival of Tencent in China as well. And EA is actually a very authentic and traditional AAA game developers as Activision Blizzard, famous by its like sports series like FIFA or some other type of games. Nintendo is similar as Sony and Microsoft, both the game creator and the console game makers. And Bandai Namco is the game maker of Pokemon Go. I'm pretty sure many people have played that game. But not only that, you know, for vision of Tencent, well, this is kind of a little bit out of the topic, but I just want to say something about it. Tencent is not only wanted to be the leader of the gaming company, but they just wanted to be the leading companies in the overall internet service as well. So I would say like in last year, Tencent has already been climbed up to the 4th place in the world, just followed by Alibaba. And since it's get listed in public in the most recent 17 years, it just gained like 500 like multiple growth since IPO. So, you know, like we always joking, like, you know, doing investment in Tencent stock is the only better deal than you invest the house property or real estate in Shenzhen in China, right? Because no matter how good the house property you purchase, it's not gonna be able to increase for 500 times in just like 15 years. So again, I just wanna, you know, show something about the strategy of the whole like Chinese game developers to expand our influence in global. But as the most typical one, Tencent is doing as a pioneer role in the whole business vision. So why I use Tencent as a typical example? Because obviously you will say, since Tencent established its gaming sector from 2007, right now it has already occupied nearly like 60% of the total revenue in China market. So I would say like, you know, Tencent is basically represent over half of the China's gaming industry. And in conclusion, we divided the whole development or involvement history into 3 sections. So one is in the early ages, like Tencent just dominated the market by its strong operational PC online games. For example, like the Crossfires, the League of Legends, and the sports series of games from EA and Take-Two. And then Tencent just successfully heritage its successful experience from the PC online games, and followed by the success of WeChat platform, and Tencent just continue its leading position in mobile game period. So I'm pretty sure like some of you have played some of the games like 王者荣耀 or like Crossfire Mobile, or some like household names like, you know, match 3 games, 天天飞车, the Wii Racing, or, you know, the match 3 games like 天天酷跑 or something like that, right? And, you know, in the most recent phase, you know, Tencent strategy is gonna leading the whole China market to go global. So obviously there is 2 reasons. One is, along with the China market getting more and more saturated. There is not many room for the Chinese developers to continually development or expand their revenue in China market only, right? Especially for Tencent as a public company to support the 30% annual growth revenue, annual growing rate of revenue. Like, the China market is not enough to support that goal. So now we have to expand the global market. The second reason is to echo the call from the government. We have to do that to along with the strategy of one road and one belt policy to bring our games to achieve the goal of cultural exporting. So this is basically the two reasons that we're gonna go global. So just wanted to give you a little bit more sense on how the global market looks like. So basically, for most of the Chinese developers, if they want to enter into the global gaming market, they definitely have to choose the most attractive markets as a priority, right? But in the same time, the most attractive market always represents the most difficulty of the entrance. So to get there, the different developers in China just choose a different ways to approach the different markets. But for Tencent, we basically want to approach the most mainstream markets, which means the green strip of the markets, like Japan, like United States, and most of the European countries, by publishing our own games. So we just got a very good achievement by publishing PUBG, which is a best game, one of the best games in history. And in the same time, we also wanted to approach the blue strip market, which is kind of like the low hanging fruit. We get there by doing two things. One is we just want to self-publishing our own games in those kind of surrounding countries. And also we will leverage our deal with the partner to approach those markets as well. For example, like in Vietnam, we just license our games to VNG, and in the rest of the Southeast Asia, we partnering with SCA Group, its brand as Garena, to expand our presence in the Southeast Asia markets. And mostly because of the similarity of the cultural and the market characteristics, for those markets, it is much easier for most of the Chinese developers to occupy and to come in. So that is why, objectively speaking, many Chinese players just trying to enter into surrounding countries as a first priority. But as Tencent, we basically want to try to approach the most potential market in the same time. So we always trying to think the best ways to get there. I want to give you an example to show that how we get there and what is our strategy and what do we get from the past failure games. So the PUBG is one of the most successful games in the world, even in history, because this game has already reached the first place in App Store for over both App Store and Google Play for over 50 markets of the different countries in the world at the first place. And in the most recent quarter, its revenue already surpassed the Fortnite mobile, which used to be the first place in the United States and the Europe markets for quite a long time. So how we get there? Because before we releasing this game, we have tried for a couple of games as a pioneer to approach the most profitable market like the United States and Europe. But we finally turns out to be a failure. So we just conclude the reason and the experience. So we get this new game optimized from different ways. The first is we just license the most popular IPs from the West, which is PUBG is already very popular IPs in the console and PC online games. And then we just do a lot of localization work to make this game better suitable for the local market players, especially for the West players. So by doing the both way, we just make the game as the best games ever in like over 50 of the mainstream market in the world. And in the last page of the first section, I just want to use one slide to show a little bit of mass of Tencent's presence in global markets, which is most of the partnership was done by investment by Tencent, right? So we used to do a lot of investment in the North American, for example, like Activision Blizzard, like Riot, like Epic Games, like Raba, like Glue. But due to the increase intense of the Sino-American relations, we just try to switch our focus a little bit from the United States to the Europe. So in the most recent years, we just invested a bunch of studios to strengthen our game development capabilities, because generally we believe that only the local developers can truly understand the needs of the local players. So that is why we want to just spread our development capabilities all around the world, other than stuck at the China market. Also, we do a lot of investment and partnership with Asian and China and some like domestic countries as well in the rest of the region to strengthen our incumbent leading position in Asian and some advantageous markets. So in the second section, I do want to share with you some possible trends in the new normal of the world, especially in the post-COVID-19 world. Because obviously, like most of us has viewed like the stock price of those like purely online service has soared up in the recent several months, right? Because obviously people are not be able to go out to do outdoor activities. They have to be stuck at home to do like indoor activities. They have no choice. They have to do everything online. So that means, for every online business, like, e-commerce, like online education, like streaming business, or even like gaming business, got a huge benefit from such a pandemic. So, to make it more straightforward, just make a simple comparison with the first quarter with the last year. So comparing with the previous year, basically the increase, the growing rate of the recent quarter comparing with the last year has just doubled the previous comparison. Basically, it reaches almost like 50% of the growing rate comparing with the first quarter of last year. That is a huge progress in terms of the revenue in China mobile market. And this is a similar situation in the Europe and the North American market as well. Well, mostly just as I said, mostly it is because like people has been stuck at home, so the engagement just has been increased like significantly high than before, right? And also because of many of the PC cafe have shut down outside of the of your home, like people is not gonna be able to play the PC games or even some like console games like outside of your home. So you have to be stuck at home to play more, to spend more time on mobile games. So this factor also drive you to increase your spending on mobile games other than other type of games. And it's the same as in the United States and in Europe as well, because because of the huge increase in the views of the streaming service like Twitch or like YouTube games, it actually pushed up the the game spending on both mobile games and console games for 20% comparing with last year. So in total, it just pushed up the whole market spending pretty much than previous years in the pandemic period. And just to make it more straightforward, I just listed the leading gaming companies' stock price as a comparison with the Dow Jones, industry average index, as well as the New York Exchange Index. Obviously, you will see the gaming company just leading the market growing rate. Tencent and NetEase actually is increasing the most, and then followed by the Activision Blizzard and Electronic Arts, which is in the United States. But the Japanese gaming company just increased a little bit more mild than other markets, because to our mind is the Japanese already spend too much on gaming markets, and they have already been the biggest ARPU markets in the world. So which means there is very little increasing room for the Japanese market to make more money. So that is why their growing rate is a little bit more mild than any other markets in the world. And the second trend or second finding is comparing with the traditional premium business model, the free-to-play game type of games is getting more and more booming in the future. Well, mostly because, because in the Western market, most of the gamers are started from playing games since 1970s, which is pretty early, right? Just imagine the scenario, like when the people of our generation have played that game like 30 years ago, but it's highly likely like in the 30 years later, you still will tend to play games as one of your major activities, right? So that is well explained why in the West, most of games are still premium games or pay-to-play games, which is because of the initial or the habit of the old users or players. But also again, along with the pandemic exploration, I would say the gaming market just attracts more and more the casual game players and more like household wives or some or more some non-gamers and convert them to be gamers. So the free-to-play game market is getting more and more booming in the future. And also the third trend is along with the entry barrier, along with the spending for each game or each of the successful game in the market growing in the most recent years, the market entry barrier is getting higher and higher than before. So by doing that, I would say the gaming market, especially the AAA gaming developers, will be getting more and more congregated, right? Other than very fragmented than before. But again, it is also good for the the user's gaming experience, because there is more and more good quality game supply that will make your gaming experience much better than before. But it is not always the negative impact, because the new trend also shows, because of the technology revolution, right? A much broader population was able to experience the AAA quality games due to the device convenience. And this is a very new trend. I think if you can remember, since the beginning of last year, the Google just announced a new device called Stadia, which can allow the users just play the games in a single device with a very, very poor CPU on it, and just rely on the streaming service by exchanging the data with cloud, which means in the future, the game will not be rely on the power of your devices, but only relying on the speed of the network and the internet access, and it will allow you to play any kind of games. But I would say like there is still a long way for the developer for the whole gaming industry to develop. But for my suggestion is, I think as an investor, we should probably keep an eye on this kind of new technology revolution, which might introduce the new gaming experience to the market and to the end users and the gamers. And maybe you should take some serious consideration on doing some early investment on such kind of pioneer field to just do some advanced layout in those kind of field to be well prepared for the exploration of such kind of like new type of games, right? So thank you guys. It's basically most of my content, and I assume that most of you are not the gaming industry professionals, so I try to keep my content as simple or as obvious as possible. So in case like some of you may have more interest into the deeper content or the insight of the market, well, just feel free to ask me any questions, maybe after the next sharing, and that I would like to answer any type of questions that you might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jax. That's very informative. I'm not a game player, but now I get to understand how the gaming industry works. Thank you. I think we'll leave the Q&A session until after the second speaker finish the presentation. So next, sure. We would like to welcome Darcy to share with us his insights into the esports industry. Darcy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So thank you everyone for your time, because I know this is Sunday night, and I think it's luckily today's topic is about gaming. So I would say this 1 hour or 2 hours could be time well spent because it's about games. And yeah, so today my topic is about esports. And I think for most of you, and even for me, esports is a new journey, because Cindy just introduced that I joined, before I joined esports industry, I worked in e-commerce, VIP.com. And I only joined esports for 2 years. So technically I'm not a veteran of esports, but since this industry is growing so fast, so probably I got something to share with you. And so first, let's look at the global esports landscape. The estimated value of the global esports market is $15 billion. And this number is estimated in 2018. And I think I remember I read some numbers that probably this number today is way bigger than the estimation made in 2018. And the active user base of esports in China is 300 million. In the previous sharing, Jax had a number about the gamer or the user of games in China, which is over 600 million. So almost half of the gamers in China are the users of esports. And around 70% of the esports users are between 20 and 30 years old. So this makes like a quick glance of the esports industry. And I think luckily we're in this time, so I'm able to transfer from e-commerce to esports because this is the right moment to join this industry. So I'll first introduce the evolution of esports industry. So esports is actually not a very new stuff. Actually, the very first esports event, which is WCG, the World Cyber Games, started in 2000, and it was sponsored by Samsung. And there are a series of games, including the StarCraft, the Warcraft, and all other games in WCG. And it used to be the number one esports event in the world until Samsung in 2013 decided to pull the sponsorship. So WCG ended in 2013. And I think in that period, most of the game players are still pretty young, just like me. I was in my high school and maybe in college. So this is the beginning of esports, but because of the size of the market, because of the income level of the users, it's still a very minor group of people playing esports. And from 2013, the major esports, the major games such as League of Legends and some other games, they started to consider esports as a way of marketing the game itself. So starting from 2013, the gaming companies begin to organize esports events. And I think that's the second period of esports, because back then esports is still a subsidy of the gaming industry. It's not independent. It's not an independent industry. And in 2013, a very fascinating thing happened, that LPL, the League of Legends Professional League in China, started to franchise its seats, just like NBA or other traditional sports in North America. So franchising gives the games, the teams or the players or the investors of esports a more stabilized environment to build their enterprise and to compete. So this stimulates the market to invest more in esports. And now franchising becomes the major way of doing esports around the world. Basically, most of the top esports leagues around the world are using franchising model right now. So I would say that's the thrive period of esports. And just a quick introduction of League of Legends esports. We have the crown jewel of esports events in the world, the League of Legends World Championships, and it starts in 2011. And as you may see, the S1, the Season 1 championship, is actually a bunch of geeks or nerds gathering in a shady net cafe and play games. This is it. But after Season 1, we go to the big stadiums, and you can see in 2017, we host the S7 in Bird Nest, Niaochao, Beijing. And that event attracts over 45,000 people. And in 2018, in Incheon, Korea, is 35,000 people. And in 2018, the Chinese team IG first won the World Championship. So maybe some of you in 2018, 2 years ago, could remember that just out of nowhere, people are shouting IG 牛逼, or you can see IG on Weibo's hot search. And that's actually a breaking point of esports entering the main or the majority's eyesight. Because before 2018, esports is just a very niche culture among the game players. but now the esports is casting influence on the majority. So in 2019, the S9, the World Championship, won 1 billion hours worldwide viewing and 44 million PCU and 22 million average viewer per minute for the final game. So this is pretty much like bigger than most of the traditional sports events. So we are confident to say that esports is having like stronger influence than most of traditional sports, and it is an industry that worth people like paying attention to. So in China, it's like I don't want to like read these numbers, but in China, the esports market is pretty strong too, and maybe this is maybe not like most people imagine about esports users. Actually, esports users or esports fans, they have pretty high income, and they enjoy pretty high education. So this is because the esports fans, they are actually the generation of like cyber technology and internet. So when they grow up, they like most of them went to college, and when they grow up, they tend to have higher, like on average, they tend to have higher income level than the vast majority. So this also gives us like pretty strong market potential for us to like monetize the esports like traffic. So talking about esports, we usually compare ourselves with traditional sports because like the business model and the basic business concept is the same. So when we compare ourselves with traditional sports, we can see that in 2016, China's sports industry market size is 1.9 trillion RMB. And the Chinese esports consumers is like reaching most like 30% of the population of almost 30% of the population of China. And these 30% are the like has the highest potential, 30%. And esports market size is over 100 billion RMB in China. And why is esports so like why is esports reaching its critical mass at this moment? I would conclude that into like these several aspects. The first one is we have mature match system. So after 10 years of like development, we eventually have a pretty stabilized league, and to create the high quality content to our fans. And also the ecosystem around the esports is developed. For example, we have companies to supply the shoutcasters and the KOLs of esports. There will be like on Douyu or Huya or Bilibili contributing like tens of millions traffic every day to support the ecosystem of esports. And we also have several big companies to provide the match events executions, and all ecosystems around the esports are pretty mature. And then these mature match system and ecosystem generates the media influence. For example, if I remember correctly, this year, I think till now, League of Legends esports has reached over 250 times of hot search 热搜 on Weibo. which is like a very phenomenal like number. And also the government is like little by little, the government is giving their approval to esports. So when I was in high school, I remember that people are calling video games the electronic heroin or electronic opium. It's like there's no way that a good student is allowed to go into a net cafe or something else. But now the CCTV, the People Daily, like every like government medias, they are like connecting very closely to esports. They're broadcasting esports. They're like promoting esports. So all of these generates higher and higher commercial value of esports. So just to give you some examples, for League of Legends, we have the top tier sponsors in the market. You can see Mercedes, Nike, and Harbin Beer, like KFC, Oppo. And one big thing is that last year, Bilibili won 3 years League of Legends World Championship broadcasting rights for 800 million RMB. So this number is still smaller than traditional sports because Tencent Sports bought NBA overseas like China broadcasting rights for like over 1.5 billion US dollar, if I remember correctly. But this is like just the beginning. We're pretty confident that this number after 3 years will exceed the NBA probably in the future. Yeah. And as you can see, like the traditional and social media are now focusing on esports. And we're, as we compare ourselves with traditional sports, it's very natural to compare the valuation and to compare the growth trajectory of esports and like the successful traditional sports, for example, NBA. So NBA league established in 1946, and like one famous team, Chicago Bulls, they established in 1966. But until 1984 and 85, they don't have a pretty strong growth. But after they reached a critical mass, like you can see the growth, the trajectory of their growth after the 1980s. So now the major teams, for example, New York Knicks or LA Lakers or Warriors, Bulls, so their valuation is over billions of US dollars. But comparing with NBA, the LPL viewership is pretty much like they're on the same scale, where like around 18 million PCU in our finals, and NBA finals is around 30 million in China. But the top team valuation is like 5%. LPL's top team valuation is like 5% of NBA's valuation. So we think that there are huge potential in the esports team valuations. And we think that esports is growing like this pandemic like is actually a great opportunity for esports, because as you can see, I think all traditional sports leagues are postponed or even moved to 2021 because of the pandemic. But esports, they don't rely on offline. So every esports leagues resume around February or March. So this gives us like even bigger confidence of like growing or like taking some of the traditional sports market share. And actually, there are some big companies or big groups noticing this and started to invest in esports. For example, Bilibili and Jingdong, and also Suning, Top Sports, they're all investing in esports. And this makes us believe that esports as a new type of sports will generate some new giants. Okay, that's pretty much of my sharing. So I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Darcy. This is a great presentation to get to know more about the esports industry. And congratulations to both of you. Obviously, it's been a challenging time for the whole world, but sounds like your industry has been benefiting from this, whole working from home or staying at home situation. But I guess I'll throw out one question. Do you think, after COVID stabilize, do you think, the recent almost explosive growth will sort of reach a plateau, or do you think it will keep growing for your industry?
Well, I think after COVID, I think definitely the growth rate will slow down a little bit, but as our generation or the Generation Z growing up, the vast majority of the population will become the potential user of esports. Like for the Generation Z, they grow up playing video games, and their parents actually host a more open attitude towards video games. So I think the growth will not plateau, maybe slow down, but will reach a very, very dramatic number in China.
What about Jax?
Right, sure. I think I pretty much agree with what Darcy said. So I would say like the gross revenue or the gross users won't be prompt that much, but sometimes the reflect or the response from the financial market is gonna be showing another picture, right? For example, when the pandemic get over, I think probably some traditional industries will be booming again, but for some like a purely online service will probably drop to some degree in terms of the stock price as a retaliated drop or something, whatever. But in terms of the absolute number or the future or the growing rate of the online service or online gaming, it won't be dropped that much. This is my opinion.
Great, thank you. And so how about looks like you are in charge of investment in overseas. A lot of activity in the emerging markets, I guess Southeast Asia. So can you share a little bit more about what you see from the markets outside of China in terms of investment opportunity?
Well, this is a very big topic, honestly, because the investment strategy in different markets are very, very different. I would say like sometimes it's even like opposite, right? For example, if we consider the developed market like the United States and Europe, obviously we just move our focus from the United States to Europe a little bit due to the situation between China and the US. But that means we're gonna switch our focus from the developed countries to emerging markets that much, because again, we truly believe that for those kind of like cultural things or cultural exporting, the developed country or the developed market has some obvious advantage in doing so, right? Because those kind of like cultural things will heavily rely on your continuous the cultural exporting, not only for gaming itself, but also related with other things like the animation, your like mentality, your education, or even sometimes your personal views on everything, right? So it is not very easy to change such a kind of thing. So we still believe that we still like look highly for those kind of like developed countries, and we will still keep investing a lot of resources or money on that kind of markets as well. But for emerging markets, we definitely, so basically we have two things to do. One is we definitely will keep an eye on, because the border between the emerging market and the developed market is not always constant, right? So sometimes the market is getting more and more mature, or a market is moving from emerging markets to developed markets. That happens time to time. So we will keep an eye on to invest in those countries all the time. And the second is we will try to invest the emerging market from some other angles. For example, in the developed market, we invest a lot of content creators, but in emerging markets, we will consider to invest those leading companies in the channel distributor, as well as some dominant publishers. Well, usually in some markets like in India or in Indonesia, like the biggest publisher or game distributor are their like telecom carrier. So we also noticed in India, like the most recent investment deal was done between Facebook and an alliance, Zhou alliance, which is one of the biggest telecom carrier in India. So we believe that doing a lot of investment in more fundamental or more like basic infrastructure in the emerging markets should be the right strategy to take the preemptive move once the market is getting more and more mature in the near or in the long-term future.
That's great. Thank you. And Darcy, you are in charge of league operations at TG Sports. That sounds like a big job, and it also sounds like a lot of fun being able to operate a league. Can you maybe explain more into what exactly league operations means, or what is a typical day for you?
Okay. So currently in League of Legends Pro League LPL, we have 17 teams. So for league operator, the first thing is to set rules for all those teams, including the gameplay rules, which like regulates everything on gameplay, for example, in game or in the match. And also we have rules about for example, sponsorships rules and franchising rules to like regulate all kind of things in the league. So probably for me, typical day for me is like we handle some violations of the rules in the league, and then we study the market trends, and then we we draft the new rules to make the ecosystem work better. So it's pretty like challenging because esports is like it's a very new staff. We can learn from the traditional sports, but still there are many like untouched grounds in esports. So basically I spend most of my time studying traditional sports and other like kind of like policy making like things, and to try to make better policy for the esports league.
Do you know the Chicago Cubs chairman is our Chicago, our booth alumni. Maybe you can reach out to him. You guys can, you know, share and compare notes.
Yeah, I have colleagues in the United States. They're actually, most of them are from like NFL or MLB or NBA. They have all of them have traditional sports backgrounds, and some have like law backgrounds to better like create regulations. Yeah, I work with them very closely.
Oh, that's great. So I have a question from the audience. I will read it to the audience and you can answer. And then afterwards, if anyone has any question, you can unmute yourself and then just ask, you know, live. So the question comes from Olivia. The question, I guess it sounds like it's for Jax. As the next generation console is going to be released soon, how would this shape Chinese games exports?
This is very good. So first, I have to say this is a very good question, but you know, it's also very kind of hard to predict. So what are you gonna bring to the Chinese developers to export our games to overseas market? Because you know what, there is a trend in the Chinese market is, you know, in a past maybe like 5 to 10 years, along with the development of China market's gaming business, I think a lot of traditional PC or console developers have transferred as a mobile game developers in the past. But again, you know, in the most recent 3 years, I think those developers just you know convert back again to as a console or PC online game creators. That is basically because of the change of the market situation, right? Because in the recent several years, the Chinese market again is getting more and more saturated. So to find more, you know, the benefit room for the studio to get to the next level, basically, you know, overseas market is a very, very potential and promising place to go. So for those like console game developers in China, again, I think it's very, very hard to predict what's gonna be the impact for them. But obviously, you know, Chinese developers is very agile respond to those like market change, not only in China, but also in global. So I would expect that, you know, in the global console market, as well as the Steam, right? You know, most of Steam games are come from the console market originally. So I would expect that in the global market, there will be more and more games developed by Chinese players. You know, mostly because of the you know, growing capability of the game design level of the Chinese developers in China. That is only thing that what I can predict. But again, you know, it's always very hard to predict what's gonna happen precisely in the future, even especially for those things that hasn't happened yet.
Cool, great. Does anybody else have a questions? You can just unmute yourself and ask questions. No?
I think I get a question from Rui He asking about like some of to discuss some of the competitors I see in the market, and also the investment in media space of game streaming. So for this question, actually these are two questions. The first one is the competitors. I think for me, the major competitor in China is the KPL, the King of Glory Pro League, 王者荣耀 league. So they're generating about half of the viewership of LPL. And there are some other like famous, like popular games, for example, the PUBG and also the mobile PUBG, and their esports leagues are starting to thrive this year. And actually, for game streaming, I think so. Esports is part of the very important ecosystem of games and contents and content platforms. Actually, basically, it's like uh, esports generates traffic for the streaming platform. And then streaming platform is a perfect place to publish or to market other games. For example, if Tencent wants to publish another game, then they would definitely use Douyu or Huya to market it. And then with a new popular game, you can generate another popular esports. And then so this become a circle of esports generating traffic for streaming platform. Streaming platform markets new game, and new game generates new esports. So for Tencent, it invests in all three parts of this circle. Tencent itself is the biggest game producer, and also it owns LPL and KPL, and is the like major shareholder of Huya Douyu. So this is pretty much a closed loop or a closed ecosystem. Yeah.
Cool, great. This question comes from Sida. What do you see is the future prospect of consolidation or M&A within the gaming industry?
I think this is probably to me, right? So
I guess also can share your perspective for your related industry.
Okay, so well, I would say this is also a very broad question. So for the consolidation of the investment in the gaming world, I would anticipate that, you know, I think the winner is getting more and more stronger, along with more and more like merging and acquisition happens worldwide, range of places. For example, like Tencent as a leading company in the gaming industry, we obviously invested like various range of gaming companies in worldwide. And especially, you know, for each of the market, we will try to filter the most leading companies to check from the first place to the 10th place, and trying to figure out which one we can literally invest, to consider to invest, right? Because some of them are kind of like unable to invest it because the thinking of its owners or some, you know, regulation from the local market. And also some companies has already been invested by our competitors in worldwide. So we basically try to choose to invest in the most leading companies in each of the market. But it's always, it is also very hard to say like which companies is gonna be a next giant company in the world, because for the gaming company, you can regard it as a content-driven company, right? Because content is a king in the future. So once a company, once one game has been is able to go viral in the world and gain a massive number of users and with a massive amount of revenues in a very, very short time, it is not always very easy for us to catch up with those kind of fishes, right? There is some very obvious examples in the world. but I don't just want to list their name. So I would say, firstly, I would say there is like two chains. One is if the whole market is developing like the previous pace without any like unexpected situation happens, I think the gaming company is getting more and more congregated, right? Which means, the winners is getting more and more strong. But the second trend is because of the, uncertainty of the development of this market, I would say it's very likely that, in the market, there will be some big company, there will be some new company just developed to be a very big one in very, very short time or period. And that for us is kind of hard to catch up with. So, we should keep a very, very close eye on like each of the mainstream market in the world. That is why, we have been divided into separate teams to keep attentioning on different markets. And we frequently travel there, but especially due to the, travel ban during such a extraordinary time period that we're unable to go anywhere. So I would say like, especially during this kind of period, there might be some unexpected company grown up to be big ones in a very short time. But fortunately, we didn't see such companies like so far. So, let's just keep attentioning and then keep trying to find out what's happening in the next phase.
Great, thank you. Let's move to the next. There are other questions from the audience. The first question is, what are the profiles of the professional gamer, age, education, longevity of gaming profession? And the second question, which is related, asking for data. For gaming industry, most revenue coming from professional gamer or others?
Okay, so I guess the first question is for me, and I don't know if the second was like, I'll try to answer this. So for a typical professional gamer, probably their career lasts for, on average, I think in LPL is 2.6 years. It's like pretty short. It's even shorter than traditional sports such as NFL. Even with such intense body contact, they have longer like career length than a professional gamer. That's because it's not because people are like getting their physical condition are no longer like fit for playing games. It's because this industry like is not yet that stable. Like some of the professional gamers, they actually leave the professional gaming industry and join the online game streaming, because streaming makes more money than playing games or playing professional esports. So this is a pretty like normal like scenario in gaming in esports industry, because the online streaming companies such as Huyao and Douyu, they are all listed companies and they get investments from stock market. So they have a huge capital to spend on attracting like streamers. So that's why like some of the professional game players, they left this industry early and probably at their like 20, 21, 22, or maybe 23 years old. And their physical condition is still good enough to play, but they have better options. And I think for the whole gaming industry, the professional gamers only contributes a very, very small fragment of the revenue, I think, or the business. I think most of the market is for the vast majority of like casual gamers.
Yeah, exactly. I pretty much supportive with what Darcy said, which is, you know, in the gaming field, we normally not divided the paying users into professional users or the normal users. We typically divided them into, like, you know, in Chinese we call 土豪 or 大 R, right? English is called like big whale, right? So we basically divide them into big whales and those are like normal payers. So for example, you know, I can give you, I just want to give you some example, which is like for some MMORPG game, which doesn't necessarily to be a very competitive game, right? And for those kind of games, it's very hard to, you know, like identify who are professional gamers, because they are playing games not for making money, but they are playing games just making for fun or just for social, right? So for those kind of games, some big whale can even spend almost like 1 million RMB a month. That is not a single case. And for those bunch of people, like, you know, for Tencent, at least for us, we do have a like dedicated team to, you know, maintain a relationship with those kind of players, as well as, you know, try to keep them spending more time and more money on the game as well, because those kind of people usually are the, you know, the guild leaders, right, or the community leaders for some, you know, leading guild or some leading teams in the game. So they have a very big influence in, you know, getting other people to play together. So basically, we divided people into this two type of group of ones. But in generally speaking, I would say, like, for a very healthy game, the general users should contribute much more than the big whales. Only for those, like, I would say, like, those kind of poison in the game, which, you know, as far as I know, like, for some games, they don't have many users on it. They probably have only like tens or even hundreds of gamers on it. But they do have a lot of workers who pretend then to be users to play the game in the game, and their goal is trying to, you know, compelling the big whales to play the game together and trying to incentive him to keep playing and keep, you know, investing money on that game. So for that type of game, I would say this is not very good for the whole industry. And, you know, as a comparison, for more like developed markets like the States or Japan, I think the general players just spending way more than the, you know, dedicated users or the big whales, because the people is getting more and more rational, right? They don't just spend money for a game, just, you know, without hesitation. They just really wanna, you know, buy something in the game and wanted to grow with their friends together and wanna, you know, make the ecosystem of the games to be healthy. So I would say, like, you know, the trend or the direction of development of the game is gonna be more and more players is getting more rational. So the spending for each gamers are more and more distributed, other than, you know, very congregated to some small group of people.
Great, thank you both of you. This has been very insightful. Do we have other questions? No? Okay. If anyone wants to turn on your video, I think you can now, right? You can see a hello to your alumni and classmates if you want. Anyone? No? Okay. Well, I wanted to conclude by thanking two of the speakers tonight. Thank you for educating us on gaming and esports. We've learned a lot from you. It's a great session. And just kind of keep everyone informed. Coming up next Saturday, we have alumni sharing with us on the topic of 5G. And then we are aiming for end of June to have a session on digital healthcare. Please look out to the email for registration. And thank you all the audience for joining us tonight. Hope you get a lot out of it, just like me. And stay safe. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you for organizing, Cindy.
Welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for
We'll
participating.
do it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.